All right, hi, my name is Katie Shank. Could you tell us your name?
My name is Angie Whitehurst.
Thank you so much for interviewing with us today, Angie.
You're welcome.
So the first question I have for you is, what is your relationship to Adams Morgan?
Well, I'm a native Washingtonian, and growing up in Washington, Adams Morgan was a place I used to come to walk or ride through in a car with my family, and my father had a beige 1950 Ford sedan, and we would ride through this area and ride up to the zoo and then down through the park and across. We had Fords on either end that you could drive through, and people just loved, kids in particular, loved to go through. So this is what this rooted area reminds me of. And then my favorite restaurants were here. There was one called Omega that was Latino, and I love beans and rice and Latino food, and it was right down the street across from this park. It is now the Ipanema restaurant, which is very good too. But I have fonder memories of Omega because I was much younger, and that's where my friends and I would hang out. And then I loved desserts, and Avignon Frere had the most beautiful, tasty, light, elegant cakes you can ever imagine, with slivers of walnuts and different flavors. They were to die for. And they also had a nice brunch on Sunday with champagne and omelets, French style, and French bread, and cafe au lait.
Making me hungry.
And it was just delightful. Let the noise pass by. And then later on in life, when I was a early adult, that would be in my 20s, I fell in love with Ethiopian food and Caribbean food and African food after having visited those countries with that type of food. So there was a restaurant called Mama Desta's, which was on Georgia Avenue, rented in an annex building owned by Industrial Bank. And Mama Desta's was a family-owned restaurant, husband and wife, and the mother-in-law. The mother-in-law did all the cooking. The son-in-law, I think, worked for AID. Well, the mother-in-law decided she wanted to go back home. And that was the end of Mama Desta's. And so then someone opened up an Ethiopian restaurant in Adams Morgan, and it was called the Red Sea. And I loved the Red Sea, and it was packed. And then they bought other restaurants after that, like Fasikas, and then you started getting a French restaurant that was owned by a French couple, an African American, La Fourchette, and then came some African restaurants, and then came some, with the renovation and development, bars and pubs of what you have now. But a lot of the older places aren't there, but I loved it because it wasn't as touristy and as crowded as it is now, and it was sort of like Georgetown was the same way. And they were sort of like when you wanted to be out, but you wanted to avoid hordes of people, you would go to Georgetown or you would come over here to Adams Morgan. So those are my remembrances of Adams Morgan.
So right, you've talked about a couple places that have been really meaningful to you, mostly the restaurants. Are there any other ones that you remember?
There was an antique shop that was closer to Belmont Street. And several decades ago, I always remember it because my father had remarried, and my stepmother, she liked this, I call it post-World War II, 1950, 1960 crystal dishes, and she liked a certain shade of pink. And by luck, I found a complete set of what she liked, and I got it for like $25, $30, and it was really worth, later on I found out, it was probably worth closer to $1,000. So that little shop, I would go and get things and like ashtrays, coasters, furniture. And then I had an apartment on 21st. I was in an apartment at 21st and California Street for a year after I had lived in Africa. I came back with a bad case of malaria, and I was not well. So I lived in this apartment while I was going back and forth to the doctor and getting myself together.
So what do you think about all of these changes that have happened to Adams Morgan?
Well, it's mixed. It's good to see renovation and improvement, but those are the buildings. And it's not so good because it did not improve the people. And when I say improve the people, it did not enhance their lives because they moved out either from being evicted or the building was condemned or some other reason that if things were equal and equitable, they would not have moved. And so that's the change. And it's good and bad, but it doesn't have a, to move one group of people out because they don't have, can't have, is to me immoral and unethical. But to look at, well, if they stay there and they have slum landlords and they're going to make them pay exorbitant money until the building falls down and then not pay any money for damages or for them to move, that's a bad outcome. So there are some people, and I look at it this, they sold the building, they renovated the building is safe and healthy, but it's not a human being. But the building is safe for other humans to live. So you can tell I don't like gentrification.
Can you think of changes that might actually help the people of Adams Morgan as opposed to like just the buildings, like you were saying? Like what could be done to make those changes for the people? Because I forgot the budget.
Well, one thing the city could do is to come up with tax incentives and wrapping around their capital tax deferments and some other measures and city bonds to mandate and create available housing. And available housing, I like this concept that several of the housing directors for the city had. The mayor was a housing director, head of the Housing Commission for New York City before he became the first mayor since Reconstruction, post Jim Crow, Walter Washington. And then we had another housing director, Bob Moore. Both of them understood that you don't build housing for poor people, you don't build housing for rich people. You build equitable housing for everybody, but you make it available so that you have everyone and anyone can move into those facilities, regardless of race, color, income, status, political pool. And that's the type of program we need in this city, so that it is one city, one people, regardless of everything and anything. It's called inclusivity exclusively. And that's my big push this year.
Well, that sounds like a great suggestion. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Adams Morgan or about maybe the festival? Anything else?
Well, I love the festival. I guess being a native Washingtonian, and Washington used to be like a sleepy town. It wasn't crowded. We didn't have all this traffic. I missed that part of it. But the festival and the number of people who come to it is a sign of success. And it is a sign of change. And being a senior citizen, sometimes change is not so comfortable. But maybe in another 5 years, it will be okay.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me.
Of course. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.